All right, guys, the Iceman here on the Iceman's Return YouTube channel, and this is another vlog. And really, lately, I sort of have really gotten into doing some vlogging. Um, Wrestling is still there, the interest is still there, and really, I want to go back from like sort of like the beginning. Um, when I first started wrestling, um, I remember, Bruno Sammartino, Pedro Morales, Pat Patterson. There was just a lot of guys back then, and it was really hard to watch wrestling because you know if it wasn't aired on one of your UHF channels, which probably a lot of people don't even know what a UHF channel was, or on a regular normal channel, we didn't get to see it, and it was a while. And I remember watching the old WWF. I think it was on a local channel 20 out of Waterbury here in Connecticut. WATR Waterbury. That was the call letters back then. And so I used to watch wrestling on the Saturdays. And it was All Star Wrestling, I think, at one point, and Superstars. And, you know, Bob Backlund um, finally became champion after Bruno Sammartino. And there was guys like Superstar Billy Graham, Ken Patera. I mean, all these guys were going for the belt. And I used to watch it, and the only thing about it I didn't like was when you were a champion back then, you just never lost the belt on these shows. Never. I mean, that's why Bruno Sammartino had the belt for like 8 years. Backlund had the belt for what, seven, 6 or 7. These guys just never lost, and that was one of the things that I didn't like about wrestling back then is because every time you watched a title bout, you always knew who was going to win. I mean, the opponent would get that close to a pinfall of 3, but it wasn't quite enough. And but it was fun to watch. It was intriguing. And as time went on, um, we're getting into the 80s, the early 80s in cable, and then I got to watch NWA wrestling. And when I started watching that, it's like, wow, I'm watching Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, um, and there was just like tons of superstars. Jim Cornette was there, a very young Jim Cornette with a tennis racket. Uh, he had his little stable. Um, Paul Ellering, or Ellering, I can't pronounce his name. Had the Road Warriors. Um, then we saw eventually the Midnight Express. That was a Jim Cornette faction. Um, there was just a lot. And then obviously the Four Horsemen came about: Ole Anderson, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Ric Flair, the originals. And watching this stuff, just like you couldn't wait for the next time to watch it. You really couldn't, because this was awesome. It really was awesome. And I still continue to watch the WWF, and because I'd watch whatever I could, and then I got to see a little bit of AWA wrestling when ESPN came about, and they started airing it, and then eventually there was another station. I forget what station aired it, but I got to watch WCCW back later on, uh, which was a pretty good promotion. They had a lot of good wrestlers there. Gentleman Chris Adams, Gino Hernandez, who died of a drug overdose. The Von Erichs, we all know the history of the Von Erichs. But as time went on with cable, I mean, you got to watch more and more wrestling, and it was such a competition back then, where it was all regional and the territories, and everybody's trying to compete with everybody else. And each territory was great in their own right. The AWA, believe it or not, this was run by Vern Gagne, I should say. Um, and we saw Jerry the King Lawler, we saw Nick Bockwinkel, we saw Ray the Crippler Stevens, we saw Greg the Hammer Valentine, we saw Kurt Hennig come out of there. Uh, there was just a lot of talent, a real lot of talent. Every single territory had talent. The Crockett promotion down south, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff. Um, then Luger came, Sting came. Um, we saw Chris Benoit. We saw, Barry Windham, Rock and Roll Express. I mean, it just there was and the Steiner brothers. I mean, there was just talent everywhere. I mean, everywhere. I mean, every promotion had tons of talent. And then finally, talent was like jumping from one promotion, going to another, and it got crazy. But it was the funnest time ever. And that was, once the TV came, with cable came around, I was hooked. And if I was going to miss a show, I'm going to tell you something. When VCRs came around, I made sure I had plenty of blank tapes to throw in the VCR, set it all up. If I was going to be gone, if I was working or whatnot, I made sure I had to tape the wrestling show. And I remember NWA Wrestling had Jim Ross as a very young commentator. Um, the early days of NWA had David Crockett and Tony Schiavone. Um, and of course, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, now the big guy in the WWE, used to be commentator for the WWF shows. And there was a lot of various, you know, co-commentators. We had Gorilla Monsoon. We've seen Jesse the Body Ventura, Bobby Heenan. I mean, those were the fun days. They really were fun times. I mean, no matter which wrestling promotion you watched, it delivered because you had such a huge, group of stars in every single promotion. And I don't think wrestling will ever be as big as it was when all those promotions were around. Yeah, the WWE is the biggest promotion there nowadays, but their issue right now is there's no competition really, and they have already peaked. And the bottom line is they don't have to really please anybody because they reached the top of the mountain, and they're slowly coming down, and that's why I really enjoy watching TNA. Um, I watch Ring of Honor when I can, and now with Global Force Wrestling coming out with Jeff Jarrett's promotion, I'm looking forward to that. It's starting to bring me back to those older days with all those other wrestling promotions. I don't think we'll ever see um, uh, a conglomerate of huge amount of superstars like we did in the past. I just think that the younger generation nowadays, they're still interested in going into professional wrestling as far as the business goes, but let's face it, trying to get into the WWE and becoming a major star in the WWE is so difficult. Whereas years ago, I mean, it didn't, you could just do it. I mean, there was stars and stars and stars. Everybody remember Magnum TA? Um, Crashed up his Porsche, pretty much ended his career. He would have probably been just as big as Ric Flair. Um, it just the matchups, the matches themselves. I mean, they had very, very their ideas. Dusty Rhodes came up with the War Games concept. He came up with Starcade. This was all Dusty Rhodes' idea. Um, and Starcade was the first, you know, pay per view by a wrestling company. And then, of course, Vince McMahon took the idea uh, from the Crockett's and built it into something that is like the biggest thing ever now. But watching wrestling throughout my life has been probably it's been a big part of my life. That's all I can tell you. And I think if I didn't have that part of my life, I don't know where I'd be or what I'd be doing. It's made a major impact on me. I remember in 1994 when I moved in with my girlfriend Peggy at the time, and I just got cable hooked up, and I was watching shows and whatnot, and I was looking for wrestling, and then finally when WCW came out with Nitro, I believe in '95, she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm switching the channel. I'm going to watch Nitro." You know, she goes, "What's that?" I go, "It's a wrestling show." She goes, "Wrestling? You?" Ugh. She was like, didn't want no part of it. She sat down one night. We sat on the couch. We started watching it, and I was totally amazed. I mean, she just caught me off guard. She leans forward. There was a match. I forget who it was, and she went like this. She goes, "Oh, come on! You pin him!" And I'm going to myself, "Huh?" And I asked her later on. I said, "Oh, don't like wrestling, huh?" And from that day on, she watched it every Monday night. And then when Bill Goldberg came about and he had his streak, and in July when he faced Hulk Hogan, she became the biggest wrestling fan ever of Bill Goldberg. We bought shirts off QVC. We bought any kind of memorabilia. We bought the NWO, the the throws. I mean, Chris Jericho shirts, Dean Malenko shirts, Ric Flair shirts. We bought all the WCW Beanie Babies they had. I mean, we had a collection of them, and yeah, it was a great time. It was just a great time, and her and I, we had a lot of fun. Now she's gone, but so I had to move on. But to this day, I still watch wrestling, and I got my older nephew Josh into wrestling. I used to take him to shows at the Hartford Civic Center because he was a big Hulk Hogan fan. And now my nephew Matt, I got him into watching wrestling. I used to order every pay-per-view every month of every year. He'd watch WCW and WWE at my house. I had a very high cable bill, but you know something, the money was there, and I enjoyed it, and I really didn't care. And to this day, both Matt and I both are big wrestling fans, and that's where I'm at. It's just fun. I just, even when I get down on wrestling and I'm home and it's on, I have to tune in and watch it because I'm addicted to it. And I probably will be till the day I move on. And, you know, but that's how it is. So thanks, everybody, for listening. It took a lot of time, but It was fun talking about it because a lot of times you don't get the opportunity to really tell your story. So, everybody have a great Tuesday night. Peace out. We'll see you again soon.